this episode, I talked to Pony Lawson, an amazing tattoo artist in Chicago, Illinois. Pony specializes in micro-portraits, usually of famous musicians, athletes, or movie characters, and the likeness he captures in each piece is undeniable. Pony is also the creator of the Tattoo Stencil app, where you can turn any photo into a ready-to-print stencil. You can download it on the App Store, and it's only $1. I've loved Pony's work for a long time now, and it was great getting to talk to him about his story and how he got to where he is now. You can find him on Instagram as @PonyLawson. My name is Jake Berry, and this is The Fine
Line. Man, I feel like my story goes back so far, and I feel like I've told it a bunch of times, so I try to find something new to bring every time. And I did think of something else that kind of was an introductory to the story that I usually tell people. And so usually, you know, I tell people about how when my dad was, he took me to a tattoo party when I was 14, right? I was super stoked about it. I saw he had gotten a couple tattoos the weeks prior. He got a big pot leaf on his right arm, and then he ended up putting my name above it as well as a zigzag man. So I thought that was pretty cool. You know, I'm one of 5 children that he had, and so I was the only one with my name on his body. So, you know, me and him were close. But going back even before then, I was big into Pogs. I don't know if you remember the milk cap game, Pogs. You know, there was a bunch of little pictures on them.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm dating myself a little bit, but that's okay. So, like, when I was a real young kid, we'd go to the store, and you'd get Pogs for 25 cents from the little vending machine, and they had lots of cool designs on it. So I ended up getting a Pog book for Christmas one time. So that book was littered with just, you know, so many different designs and little images here and there, you know, tiny little things. So, in 6th grade, I think I was probably like 11 or 12 years old maybe, I kind of got semi-obsessed with those Jelly Roll pens. They were a bunch of different colored pens that you could buy. Like, they were the new hot thing that you could pick up at Walgreens. And
Nice.
So I ended up having like this big collection of them. I had a big pencil bag, you know, that was pretty thick. And I would just take those to school, and then I would draw those Pog designs on paper.
Nice.
And then my friends would buy me like a Little Debbie out of the lunch line or something like that if I would draw those designs on them.
Oh,
or, you
cool.
know, they'd give me 25 cents, 50 cents, whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, so that hustle's been going on for a minute. I wasn't exactly about the money. I was just having fun drawing on people, you know. It was better than drawing on the paper.
Yeah.
And I was having fun with it. So when my dad took me to a tattoo party, I was already, like, enveloped in that somewhat. And I was like, absolutely, let's go, you know. So we went over to this garage, and I just remember everybody left for a bit, and now I realize they went to go smoke a bunch of weed, right? And they came back like 20 minutes later, and I had sat down in the chair. The tattooer asked me, his name was Evil Ernie, it was a great name, and he asked me what I wanted tattooed, and I had no idea what I wanted, so my dad was just like, why don't you just give him his initials on his arm or something like that? So, you know, we're sitting down, and he draws my initials on my arm, and he's so high, he's like, oh shit, man, you got to stand up while I do this, otherwise he's going to come super crooked. I was like, all right, cool. So I ended up doing that, and I mean, it stung like hell, but it wasn't as bad as I thought, right?
How old were you?
I was 14.
Oh, wow.
So I was pretty young.
Yeah.
And being 14, I was very impressionable, of course, right? So I go to school the next day, my sleeve is all rolled up. I'm thinking I'm like the coolest kid in school, right? Because I don't know of anybody else that has a tattoo. And one of my buddies offered to sell me a tattoo machine of his dad's for $20. And I don't know why I was thinking this would be like a real tattoo machine or whatever, but he ended up bringing this homemade machine to school, and I paid him $20 for it. It was made out of like a toothbrush, a remote control car motor. It was essentially like a prison machine, right? Sure. And you just plugged it right into the wall. And as soon as you plugged it in, it just started ripping. You know, there wasn't no like on button or anything. You just plugged it in, it just ran. So, you know, I started fucking up a lot of friends, you know. I would also, now I'm in the garage fucking up all my friends. I was in this, like behind this chicken shack one time, tattooing, the first tattoo I can remember, it was the word bling bling on this kid's arm. Wow. And I just remember bleeding so much. Like, I couldn't get any ink to stick because, you know, it was like a big pen ink. It was like thread wrapped around a needle. And I'm just making this kid gush blood everywhere. Oh, the and poor just guy. Scar him up. Yeah, it's crazy. And from there, you know, like I said, I'm 14, going on 15. So now I'm hooked on this like weird thing that nobody else has. And I grew up in a town of 3,000. So it was a very small town. So nobody else around me is doing this, you know, for miles. So, I started to work at a coffee shop when I was about 15. I saved up my coffee shop money and bought an actual machine, you know, from, I think, I think it was a Superior tattoo catalog or something like that. I don't know if you remember those, but they were very cheap machines, like $95, $145, something like that. And so I got one of those. And of course, there's still no such thing as tattoo TV shows. Tattoo magazines are hardly around. There's Tattoo Magazine, there's Outlaw, and Lowrider, and things like that. So the way I learned was from looking through those magazines, seeing what I could pick up. And so for the longest time, tattooing out of my house, I wasn't using rubber bands on my coil. So you can imagine that needle was just bouncing around. And again, my first few tattoos probably didn't stick around very much either. They kind of disappeared or faded. And then I remember the first time I saw a needle on a machine, I was like, oh my God, like I've been doing this wrong the entire time. So after that, I'm still tattooing people out of school because now I'm probably 16, 17. And we end up moving, my mom and my sister and I end up moving out of the town that we were in, the town of 3,000, into a slightly bigger town of like 20,000, I think, where there was 2 tattoo studios. And me and the main tattoo studio, this guy's name was Woody, we ended up hating each other, right? I didn't think he was very good. He didn't think I was very good. I was doing it out of my house, so he would talk shit to everybody about me, and I would do the same towards him. So we had this relationship. We never met each other, but we just hated each other's guts. The only other shop in town was this place called Grateful Threads, and it was like a hippie shop, a place reeked of patchouli. It was mainly a clothing store, and they happened to do like tattoos and piercings and back. It was only one guy that did it there, and he was kind of like a strung-out junkie. I hate to say it, but he ended up taking $500 from me and basically printed out a certificate and said, "You're a tattooer now." And I was right. Cool, and then I'd go right back home and tattoo with my friends because there was no place to work.
Right.
So I was working at Little Caesars, again, years ago, and Woody, the guy who I had that hateful relationship with, ended up coming in, and he said, "Man, I'll teach you how to tattoo. I'll show you the ropes and take you under my wing if you promise to stop tattooing out of your house." And I think we just kind of set aside our differences at that point, and I was like, hell yes, like you got to be kidding me. I've been waiting for this for 3-4 years now. I'm fucking pumped. Let's go. So I finished off my shift. I gathered all my photos that I had taken, and again, this is back in the disposable camera days.
Right.
So like all my tattoo pictures
there was no
are
iPhone
just
photos or anything like that.
No, nothing like that. So it was, when you took the photos, you'd likely have like A&D on it or something that would make the tattoo super glary. Wouldn't be that good a quality. But, it's all I had. So I didn't know anything about taking photos either. So I took all that stuff and I took it over to Woody's, and he's like, "Cool, man, join the crew." I never had an actual apprenticeship with him, but he kind of, since I was tattooing for years already before that and developing a bunch of bad habits, but he kind of showed me the ropes and the right way to do things. And I stayed with him for a couple years, because now I was the only other artist at that shop. It was just me and Woody. And so I kind of feel like we ran that town, you know what I mean? It was a very small town, but I felt very cool being in that environment. And it was an old school biker shop. He was a big ass bald dude, and he had hands the size of boxing gloves, and it was essentially all the shit that you dealt with in an apprenticeship without the apprenticeship. Like we had like all the, we threw our bodies through drywall, like we did it all. It was lots of painful moments. If you fucked up, you got the head or gut. What do you want, head or gut?
Oh, right, yeah,
shit, man.
You had like a pretty old school experience then in getting into the
very
industry.
Much so, right,
yeah.
right.
And what year was that?
This was around 2002, maybe.
Oh wow. Okay, so almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, I'm old.
And where was this at you? Where was the town?
That town was in LaPorte, Indiana.
Oh, okay.
So I grew up in Indiana. I wasn't born there, but I grew up in Indiana. That's where I spent most of my life until I was about 21 or so. Yeah.
And now you're mainly based in Chicago, is it?
Correct, right. So I have a shop. I've had this shop here in Chicago for about 7 years. I've been working in Chicago for about 12 years. I worked at my buddy Gary's shop for a while first before working on opening up this place. And and then now I kind of travel back and forth to New York and LA about every other month or so. I don't have my own places out there. It's just, I go work with the Inked magazine studio, and then I go work at my buddy's shop in California, in Toluca Lake.
Nice. Very cool. Or do you ever do any guest spots anywhere else?
I did in the past, and I liked them a lot. I would like to start doing those again because I feel like guest spots are a little more beneficial than tattoo conventions in my eyes. Whereas, you're developing like a relationship with these people. It's a lot more personable. Everybody's not running around, crazy. And you kind of get the vibe of the city. The person whose shop you're guesting at usually takes you around for dinner or whatever, shows you some things. So I used to do a lot more guest spots. I traveled to all sorts of different smaller cities and but now I'm kind of just back and forth from LA to New York. It makes it easier. I'd like to do some other spots in between, but I feel like most of my clients come from those two coasts.
That being in 2002, I mean, you would really, like, that was kind of before tattooing started progressing into like the modern style of tattooing, even like that, that style of what people started seeing on television and stuff like that. Like you're saying, it was, it was like even like the magazines were probably pretty limited on what you could find back then.
Without a doubt.
So you kind of, I mean, it's cool. You kind of saw what it was before all this, and then you obviously developed into a new. How did you make that transition from what you learned and how you learned into what you're doing now?
That's a good question. So I think I was always kind of fascinated with realism, right? Growing up, again, going back to being a kid, that's all that was around me was realism. Like we didn't have cable, we had PBS, so I watched a lot of Bob Ross. And then,
cool.
and I don't know if they had these schools where you're from, but like on television, they had these commercials that were like, you can learn to draw, you can learn to do art. We'll send you these pamphlets where if you draw these things, we'll grade you or whatever. So that was like free drawing material for me and my cousin. So we'd get these pamphlets sent in, and there was like a little bear you could draw, a little house, and a little turtle. I know there's probably some people that are listening that are like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. But so again, it was always realistic stuff on those pamphlets. It was like realistic things. Bob Ross was realism. So that was always just kind of always around. And then through middle school, in art class, people would have me draw their stuff as well. We draw our shoes or something like that. So people would have me draw their shoes. They're supposed to be the ones drawing them. But I think I just did a decent job in middle school to where, everybody had me draw their stuff. Yeah. So that realism was always around. So that was the kind of goal when I started tattooing. I wanted to do portraits. 15 years ago, I was like, I want to do portraits, blah, blah, blah. Especially when I first saw people like Nico Hurtado and Tom Renshaw and even Bob Tyrell. Again, only in magazines. Back in the day, I had no idea what they looked like, but I knew their work. I was like, oh man, this is hot. I can't believe this. You can do this on skin. So that's what I wanted to do from that point out, was work on the realism and work on portraits and things like that. And also because I think that people really appreciate portraits, and I think there's a little bit more of a stronger bond between somebody who's getting a family member or something like that than there is with just, like a cuckoo clock or something, right? There's just something a little more strong about that.
Yeah. Of course.
So I started to do, I tried to do portraits, and when I first got to Chicago, I was trying to do them for dirt cheap. I just wanted to do those. Like any opportunity that somebody would bring me a portrait, I'm like, yes, please, 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 give me that opportunity so I can practice some more. And then, I would tattoo the piercer, I'd tattoo colored portraits on him. So it was always the realism, but I found myself getting frustrated with color. It always took longer. It was harder on the skin. It was harder on the healing for several reasons. I just kind of started leaning towards black and white. And then as far as developing, I guess I still don't see myself having like a style, right? I'm pretty versed in everything, but as far as the micro portraits go, I was at a convention in California, maybe like how long has it been now? 4 or 5 years ago, I think. And I did a little Mac Miller. Somebody asked me if I had time to do a portrait, and I didn't really have time for a full one. I was like, well, we could do a small one, And nice. She sent me Mac Miller and Freddie Mercury. And of course, I would have done either one of them. I love Freddie Mercury. Yeah. But we decided on a little Mac Miller. And as soon as I did the Mac Miller, I noticed immediately, at this point, I've been tattooing for 15 plus years, right? So I noticed immediately people were like, oh, I want one of those. I want one of those. I want one of those. And then it just kept snowballing. I want one of those. And I was like, well, fucking A, now I can just start booking these things that I want to do instead of just, whatever came my way. And then, so from that point, as soon as I got like 10 micro portraits out, that just started to be.
And was that around the time that Instagram was prevalent, or was this before that as well?
Well, this was probably only maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. And I'd say Instagram's, I remember Instagram. Yeah,
that was probably the start. Yeah, that was probably the start of tattoo artists though being like really strong on Instagram.
Yeah, probably right. Like, because I know my first picture on Instagram is a picture of a Lego. It's not even a tattoo. I didn't know what I was doing with Instagram back in the day. Probably the first 5 photos, to be honest. But
yeah. I'd say it was probably about 6 or 7 years ago that tattoo artists really found their place on Instagram. I think, and like actually became, I don't know what you'd call influencers and stuff.
Yeah, right.
Had like all the followers and people like booking in that way.
Yeah, and then it just got addicting.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, but that's cool. That gave you the opportunity to like you said, start booking more of those kind of portrait style pieces. And did you find when you were doing that tattoo at the convention, the smaller one, did you find that it actually did take less time, or or was it like?
So,
because for me, like I feel like small stuff even takes as long as big stuff.
Yeah, you're 100% right. At the time, I think my thought process was, I'll do these smaller ones and it won't take me as much time, because I get in this weird headspace when I have to do an entire panel on an arm, and my goal is now to finish, and it's not so much do a great job. It's, man, I have to get this thing finished before this guy leaves, right? Because we're on a certain amount of time limit. We're not really, but I just have like this 6, 7, 8 hour time in my head where I'm like, I have to get this finished. So I was like, these micro guys won't take me as long. I'll focus on getting everything, perfect as I can anyway. But now the longer that I've been doing them, I'm still sitting on them 6, 7,
totally.
8. I think I was just did an 8 hour one 2 or 3 days ago. So it's still just as long.
Yeah. But I mean, if you got to get all that detail in there, and also, the more time you spend on a piece, the better it's going to be. That's kind of just, it sounds simple, but it's true.
Right, absolutely. Like and it's more of a whereas when I was doing big size portraits, I was kind of just whipping through, like, let's get this done, to where now I think every single stroke is, it's methodically placed, right? Like, I'm like, okay, I have to push this here. Every single stroke counts now.
Yeah, there's no space that you just got to get filled in or whatever like that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool. So you started doing these small portraits about 4 years ago, and at what point did you decide, okay, I want to create, because you created this app for stenciling? Did you just see kind of like a problem with, was it the micro portraits that you were having a hard time getting, like maybe all the information you needed in the stencil, and then you were like, you know what, I think there's got to be a better way to do this?
So I believe this dates back before the micros, the stencil app, because I do remember using it on this Conor McGregor tattoo I did years ago, and that was an entire full arm panel, right? I was talking with one of my coworkers who I still work with, Garrett, and again, at this time, I've never seen a Photoshop stencil ever at that time. And when Garrett came to work here, he was using Photoshop stencils that he picked up from his boss, Jose Perez, or his old boss back in the day, Jose Perez Jr. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't know you could do that. Well, there's got to be an app to make the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And that was just like a light bulb click. I was like, there's not. Everything I found was only like Tiny Scanner or something that wasn't tattoo based.
Yeah.
It was just made to do something else, some office work or something like that. So the quality wasn't there.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh man, there's got to be a way to get this Photoshop filter on your iPad, because not everybody's going to want to carry around computers, especially to conventions and things like that.
And specifically for tattoo artists, like that's huge, because I feel like there's so many things out there for other type of art, but like with tattooing, like I found the same thing with the podcast and everything like that. Anything that people want to do, I feel like there's just a gap missing in the tattoo
always
part of it.
Always, I mean, it's those who find it first get the treasure, right? I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just couldn't believe that there was that gap, and so I started looking for developers, because I consider myself a computer nerd, but I'm not like super savvy, especially when it comes to coding, developing, and things like that. I don't know anything about that. So I started looking for developers. I checked Fiverr. I checked a few other places. I was clueless on what to do, so I just started poking around until I found an iOS developer. And I gave him heaps of money, and he didn't make the app that great. So if anybody remembers, when the app first came around, it wasn't that great. There was always little bugs here and there.
Oh, no.
And I just knew it could be better. However, our language barrier wasn't the best, and like I said, this guy was charging me out of the ass. So I kept prodding around a little more, and I happened to find a better developer who was charging me way less. So, and he understood what I wanted. He wasn't charging me until I got what I wanted out of it. So I felt like this was just the total opposite end of the spectrum as far as working with a developer. And anything I wanted in there, he would take the time and do it. If he did it wrong, he would do it again, and then he would charge me. And then, so I would take, little tips from other tattooers who had been like, hey, man, you should implement this in the app. You should implement this in the app. And I think that's why it's so important that, like you said earlier, having something that's made for tattooers instead of just another app, because now you can have input from other people and I haven't updated it in a while. However, if a great idea were to come my way, I would throw that to the developer's way and be like, let's put that in there, and it's an ever-growing thing, which is nice. And it's $1, so it's not, you know what I mean? My goal is never to make money from it. It's there to be a tool for everybody to use, and that was the ultimate goal and still is the ultimate goal. And, several people say that, you should be charging more. You should be charging $5, you should start charging $10. But the problem is with that, as soon as you start charging $2, somebody else is going to make an app that's just like yours and charge $1, right? So I don't really want to do
cool.
that.
I think it's really cool that you actually just did it, because before I even knew it existed, I was thinking, man, it'd be so cool if like there was something for this, especially for portraits and stuff, where even like when you're making a stencil yourself, like it's never super accurate, is it? Especially like in certain parts of the eyes or whatever, teeth or something like that. It's very easy to get slightly off.
Yeah, you're battling human error when you're tracing, and again,
of course,
I'm not downing that whatsoever. Sometimes I think to myself, like, maybe this tattoo would be better hand traced, but I haven't hand traced a stencil in years now. Every single tattoo that comes in, if it's a logo, if it's a face, anything, I use that tattoo stencil app.
Yeah.
Just because it's, there's no human errors.
Is there a feature on your app where you could hand draw certain parts of it if you wanted to?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a little edit button that's as soon as you pull in the image, and it makes a stencil. There's a little edit button, I think a pencil up at the top right, to where you can erase or make lines. So what you'll do is you take your finger and press the little preview buttons. You can kind of see your reference underneath it, and then as soon as you let go, you see the stencil on top. So you can kind of just erase some things, add some things, and
it's it's like things like that just continue to push the industry forward as well. And just I feel like tattooing has been kind of behind a little bit in certain parts of except for the last 8 to 10 years, the development of tattooing has been kind of very slow. And then there's been this huge spike all of a sudden in the machines we're using, the equipment that we use, the technology, iPads, stencil printers, everything has just gotten so amazing. But
which is just making it so much easier for
oh my God, of course. Yeah. And
to not have to mess with springs or rubber bands.
Yeah, totally. Or even just hand tracing a stencil on, you know what I mean? Even if you're hand tracing on an iPad, you can still print it out. But hand tracing an actual stencil, that was, because if it was the wrong size or something, you have to do it all over again.
Yeah, buddy. I was working out at this one shop years ago that didn't have had no computer, no internet, and no stencil machine. They had
the dark ages
reference books. Oh my God, it was crazy. So if somebody wanted a rose or something like that, we'd go to the back, you'd have the rose, and you could trace it or whatever, but you always ended up tracing it on the stencil paper. So again, I mean, if you were doing a large tattoo and you fucked up 4 of those lines in the stencil, are you going to start over, or are you just going to let those stencil lines rock?
Yeah.
Right? And so that also goes into the reason why we're seeing these tattoos become fine art pieces now, instead of just stuff obviously I wasn't tattooing back when acetate stencils were a thing, but the people that were tattooing back when acetate stencils were a thing, there's no way that they could have dreamed of doing the stuff that we're doing now.
Yeah. And you're just eliminating problems and making things way more efficient for tattoo artists now, so they can actually just focus on great tattooing.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's cool. Like I was saying, what I mean is, I think things like that, like what you saw a gap there, and you kind of just took the initiative to go, okay, I'm gonna just make this, I guess. And it's things like that kind of just move things forward, and I really appreciate that, because we do need more of that in the industry, and you're starting to see more and more of it come out, which is really cool. But like we're saying, things like machines have advanced so much. What machines are you using right now?
So I like to experiment with everything. You know what I'm saying? With machines, with needles, with ink. I don't ever want to just sit with one thing and that be it. I do think some things are better than others, obviously, but I think tattooing is constant experimentation. It should be called the practice of tattooing because it's like a doctor. You're constantly practicing. You're constantly trying new things.
That's good.
So the machines that I do, like my workhorses are Bishop wands. I've got all 3 wands. I mainly use the lining wand, but I've never used a rotary that has lasted this long.
Really?
Almost every other single machine I've picked up as far as a rotary goes, I always end up with some issue down the road. Something breaks, something doesn't work as well, something fluxes. I have not had one single issue with these Bishop machines.
Nice.
So they are my workhorses, and then I will still continue to experiment with other things.
Yeah.
But those babies are hot.
Yeah, they're great machines, and obviously they're very popular. A lot of artists are using them, and I've talked to a few people that they're like, yeah, I'll never change. They're obsessed.
Have you happened to see the Numa 4 machine that is out?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, so he came out with what he calls the Numa 4, and I find this super fascinating. Carson Hill he's also like an innovator, and he tries to push things, push the limits. And what he made was it's a rotary machine that runs like a coil. And you're going to have to look this up because I'm terrible at explaining this, but there's a large spring inside the body. And the way that he built these cams are, the rotaries don't run up and down like every other rotary machine. They actually run sideways. And because it runs sideways, he was able to make these little caps that have, they're little circles that kind of have little mountains on them. And as the machine spins, the needle is only going into the skin, let's say 20% of the time or 30% of the time, depending on what cap you put in there, instead of where a rotary is always going to be 50%, right? It always has that, what do you call, infinite give, to where there is, no matter what kind of cam you have in there, it's always going to be rigid.
Yes, yeah.
And I know FK Irons has the machine where they had a spring as well, but it's just not the same. It's still a rigid machine with a spring. But the way that
I think FK Irons was doing this, it's like actually it's like a computer that gives you the give or something like that.
Wow,
I'm not entirely sure.
Oh shit, on the Zion.
On the pen, yeah. So it's like an actual, it acts as if it's like a coil. Like
Really?
It gives you that give. Yeah. I don't know exactly what the technology is behind it. I think it's
give.
Yeah, digital give. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what they call it, digital give. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as compared to that one, like this one is actual give.
I'm looking at it
Because
here.
you're having this spring is probably every bit of 3 inches tall, so it's a good sized spring in that body. I don't know if you're looking it up right now.
Yeah, I'm looking. I can kind of see they have like the X-ray kind of like picture where it shows you the inside of it.
Yeah, so you see that little round cam part. Like every time it spins around, it's causing. It's so fucking hard to explain, but it's just only going down a certain amount of time instead of the 50%. So what he says, it's giving the skin less trauma. But regardless, anyway, I know it kind of got off on a tangent here, but it's just fascinating because I always found Carson Hill fascinating as far as like pushing things further, pushing the tattoo machines further. And usually he's a bit ahead of his time, especially when it came to like the pneumatic machines that were ran on air compressors years ago. To me, I don't think I saw very many people using those because it was such an expensive setup. You had to have a compressor that was there that was typically loud unless you spent a few $1,000s to get a quiet one. But yeah, so anytime I see a new machine, I'm always definitely fascinated with it.
Yeah.
I try not to buy them because they're very expensive, but sometimes you break down, or me and a buddy at work will talk about it and be like, oh man, let's get it and try it and see what it does.
Yeah, they're cool. I've gone through a few machines, and I found for myself personally that I feel like I'm better if I just focus on one and kind of like learn how to work with it, as opposed to like if I start messing around with all sorts of machines, I feel like I have a hard time getting super familiar with one. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Then I'm like,
absolutely makes sense.
But I don't know. I'm probably limiting myself a bit because with different styles and different parts of the tattoo, I probably would benefit from switching around a little bit, but I don't know.
Yeah, see, I think I'm going to have to agree with you there because Bishop, I love you so much, but those machines don't have give. They're all very rigid, right? So they've got 3 machines set up, one a shader, one a packer, one a liner. But if I were to want to achieve something else, it would be a little bit harder to use that machine than it would be to use another machine that does that job specifically.
Exactly.
Right? Or that's set up like that. So I do agree with you as far as like getting used to one machine, and I do the same thing. I'll use one machine for 6 months and then go on to another one or whatever. But there are always those workhorses in the background where I know it's like I have to blow this one out of the water. I'm going to go with what I know works best,
of course.
and then I'll
Yeah.
go back to the regular daily driver.
Yeah. And the scary, the truth is there are certain projects that you're like, yeah, this is too good of an opportunity to risk messing around with something else.
Experimenting with, yeah, for sure.
And, I know clients probably don't want to hear that, but it is true.
Right.
But speaking of that, like how do you, sorry, I don't know if you can hear my daughter. She's
not
playing
at
out in
all.
the back. But, no, my question is, how do you, hi Rose.
Oh, now I hear. Hi Rose.
No, so basically, I think, everyone loves when like a good project comes up, and you get that email and you're like, oh my God, yes. Like I'll book you in tomorrow if I can,
Right.
But like, it seems like a lot more artists now are able to basically only do those projects. And I just am like, that's amazing, So how do you find that balance in clients coming in with the right projects and, having that conversation with them about where it's going to look best, what size it's going to look best, maybe even just like finding a different reference photo that would look better. Cause I know that could be very difficult for some clients and, they're pretty set in what they want and there's very little give there. But, I think obviously now in today's world, it's easier for them to see what's possible out there and what looks best just because of Instagram and stuff like that. But
absolutely,
there's still definitely that conversation that has to be had between the artist and the client. So what does that look like for you?
Well, I think for the most part, I've been pretty lucky for the past few years to where people kind of know what to expect, right? So I'm kind of just getting those tattoos that are geared towards what I already do. So for the most part, I don't really have to be too combative on anything,
Nice.
Locations, I'm pretty straightforward upon the emails. Like if somebody suggests they want the ribs tattooed, I don't do ribs anymore. It's too much of a battle for so many reasons. It's not good on your back. It's the tattoo becomes twice the size. The client hates it. So you're almost setting yourself up for disaster. I think
Absolutely.
when it comes to, especially when portraits on ribs, they just, I don't know, man, they can get tricky. So typically, I get a lot of arm or leg requests, which are great. I'll tattoo limbs all day long.
Yeah.
And chest, okay too. Normally I don't have to talk a client out of a placement unless it's maybe something on like the back of a forearm where it's a little more round, and I'll ask if they're open to another spot. Most of the time they are, and I let them know that the tattoo itself would look better elsewhere. And and obviously they're spending a lot of money. I think they want to get the best tattoo possible. So
of course,
if I'm outputting any signs of like it might not look as good on the outside, well, they're like, well, then let's do what we need to do to make it right. And even the size, they're usually pretty they'll compromise. Like my goal is not to make a tattoo very small. My goal is to make a tattoo fit the size of the canvas that we're working with. I just happen to like a lot of that extra skin around there as well, so it looks good. But if the tattoo ends up being 6 inches, 10 inches, that's what it is. But yeah, so like I said, going back to your question, for the most part, I don't really have to fight too many people anymore, and especially because of Instagram, people are finding the artist that they like more. Whereas, if we rewind 10 years ago, somebody would just show up and they would fight you tooth and nail to try and get what they want out of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's right. That's very true. But I mean, is there any sort of styles that you would want, or like any sort of other elements that you'd want to implement into your work that you feel like it's, because it could be very hard for, I feel like a lot of artists, they find something that they love to do and they will run with that for a good length of time. And, especially because people, like you're saying, they come in, hey, I've seen what you've done in the past, I want something like that. So it's very easy to kind of pigeonhole into certain styles that, in my career, I've like had to fight to get out of that, into something else. And so is there any sort of styles or any sort of elements that you'd want to incorporate into your pieces moving forward that you feel like you're finding difficult to transition to? Or
well, I would like to add other elements, and I have somewhat in the past, whether it be words or whether it be some other shapes or elements that go along with the tattoo. I just find a lot of my clients travel, and I have to be mindful of how long the actual tattoo itself will take without all the extra elements. So if I think it's possible to add those in there, I'll bring it up to them and ask them. And again, a lot of times they're cool with it. Sometimes they would just want what they've seen, which is cool. It's their body. It's what they live with. But I do want to eventually, and maybe sometime soon, make my way out of micro portraits, maybe realism altogether. I don't know. I kind of want to feel, yeah, man, I want my work to...
That was not what I was expecting you to say.
Well, I want my work to kind of almost like mimic an art gallery where it's like they have a shelf life. You know, it's like you happen to get a micro portrait from Pony, and that's cool because you got it during those 5 years that he was doing that. You know, and then maybe for the next 5 years, I'll do nothing but solid black back pieces. You know what I mean? I have no idea. But I do think that they have a shelf life.
That's cool.
I just don't know how long that is.
I think it's great to hear that, though, because in a way, it is so important to be moving with the times, isn't it? You know, and to not just get so focused on what you're doing right now, even though it's amazing. And I think but ultimately what we want to do is continue to push, you know, continue to like push what's possible and push like those boundaries and find new ceilings.
Yeah, man.
You know,
push your limits and not get bored of what you're doing. You know, continue to love what you're doing. And when you start to not love what you're doing, you have to, you know, push your limits out even further.
Exactly.
And again, going back to what you said, I do find that like the artists that I follow that are fantastic, but they don't end up keeping up with the times, end up plateauing, right? And their artwork is still just as good as it was, but now they're kind of left behind because they're not evolving with the times.
Yeah, it's crazy to see like certain artists that I really, really just could not believe what they were doing 5 years ago. And I still have so much respect for them. But now, like so many people have gotten past that and they're still doing the same level of work that they were 5 years ago. It's impressive because they kind of helped start that style or start certain things, but it's like almost overlooked now because just it's kind of everywhere, you know, and done better.
Right.
So it's kind of like, you know, and I obviously I want to like, I don't mean that in any disrespect to anybody who helped start any styles or anything, because it's so important. But you know, it's one of those things that like, just as an artist, like I always want to continue to get better and, you know, move forward in that way. But
for sure. And if you're constantly inspired by other people, like you might see something that you never, you know, tomorrow you might see a tattoo, be like, holy crap, that's so cool, I want to be a part of that, you know.
Yeah,
and then next thing you know, Jake's off doing, you know, watercolor tattoos.
yeah, you never know. No, but I think that's good. I think that's cool. And I always like to ask people, because you just never know, like so many of these artists that we look up to and we're watching, yourself included, it's like you have in your head, oh my God, they've just mastered that and they're so good at it. And then sometimes you talk to them and they're like, yeah, I just don't want to do it anymore. And it blows my mind, because I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you have to keep doing that. That's like,
for sure.
You know what I mean?
I definitely enjoy doing those micros. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I don't want them to be, you know, the death.
The only thing. Yeah, of course. And that's cool. I like that. And I've had that same thought in my head where, because I've spent the last 2 years kind of questioning, you know, I feel like I have a bit of a more diverse portfolio than a lot of artists nowadays that are like, a lot of people are very specialized. You know, it's like, this is my style, which I think is absolutely amazing, because you go online and you see someone's work and you know straight away that it's them, you know, which is, it's so spectacular to see in tattooing. But for me, I feel like a lot of times I do bounce back and forth in certain styles, and I've kind of like questioned whether or not I should find something more specific. And I actually have come to I've found peace in the fact that like there is a bit of variety, and that's okay. Do you know what I mean? And to 100%. Like just do the best version of whatever you're doing, you know?
Right. I think that's spectacular. Because even though, like, I mean, I'm not posting a lot of the tattoos I do, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm still doing color work. I'm still doing tattoos that I may not necessarily enjoy.
Sure. But
I do also think that helps keep you in check. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You don't want to lose those abilities.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And, yeah, because I think it's cool, and to see you now, you started this YouTube channel that you kind of, I've seen a lot of people send in their work to you, and you're actually going through all sorts of styles of work, and you're like kind of sharing your thoughts and critiques on the pieces, which is a very cool idea. I've watched a good handful of those videos, and it's really interesting to see.
Good, man. That's good to hear. Thank you for saying
I actually think it's super cool, because I think it's great for the artists, you know, because they can actually like get someone's feedback, and someone who knows what they're doing and has been in the industry for a long time. And that could be really hard to find, actually. So tell me a little bit about that YouTube channel and how that started for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're right, because especially like when you've got a shop full of tattooers, chances are that one tattooer A is going to go to tattooer B and be like, hey, does this look good? And they're going to be like, fuck yeah, bro. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's cool and all, but that's not what you need all the time. When the client leaves, break it down. Like, let's figure out what you can do to improve or whatever. And for me, the reason why I did it was because, again, nothing like what I'm doing now was around when I started. When I started, everybody was very secretive. Nobody wanted to give up shit. Like, nobody, not even the people I was working with, my boss, and like, they had these trade secrets that they didn't want to give up, because if they gave them up, then I could use them against them in the future or whatever. And I still think that's what a lot of people are holding on to. They're afraid to give up their secrets, and I think we should try and shy away from that. And tattooing has kind of become very gatekeepy. In a little bit of a gross way, but so I'm obviously, I know I'm not the first one, but I do want to be, again, part of something that helps education. Like, let's if somebody wants to learn how to tattoo, they're probably going to pick up a machine and tattoo somebody out of their house or whatever. They're going to do something that most tattooers don't approve of. It's almost going back to like if your 15-year-old daughter wants a piercing and you say no, she's going to go get it out of somebody's house, right? Yeah. So it's like, let's try and be as responsible as we can and guide them in a right way, And so I know that people are sending in work that they might not be in a shop. I don't know that, however, but I'm just going to try and give them the best advice I possibly can. And I actually started, it's been on my mind for a long time to start the channel. I just never had the nerve to do it until I saw, I don't know if you're familiar with The Art of Reese by chance. Oh, man. So she does a lot of like workshops. I don't exactly know how to put the wording, but she...
On YouTube?
No, not on YouTube. If you go on her Instagram, she'll post like reels that like Procreate tips for artists or this, that, and the other. So she does a lot of like, she tries to help out tattooers as well. And initially, Reese, don't hate me for saying this. Initially, I thought it was kind of cheesy when she was doing it. I was like, oh man, like it's so cheesy. But then I honestly had to like take a step back, and I noticed what she was doing. It was growing herself. It was helping other people out. And I just had this realization. I heard her say on one of her reels, she was like, why do you care about what other tattooers are going to think? Like, why do you care about the opinion of somebody that you'll never meet or never hear their opinion? And she's absolutely right. And I think that was something I had to get over with is, a lot of people are going to be like, man, you're telling all these people what to do and they're not real tattooers or whatever. I don't know. And I just had to stop. I had to get that out of my brain, I to not care about what other people are going to think about what I do on this YouTube channel, whether they think it's cheesy, whether they think I'm dumb or whatever. It's that, they're not paying my bills and people do appreciate what I'm doing. So as long as there's a few people out there that appreciate it, then I'm going to keep on doing it.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. Yeah, because it's true. And, the tattoo industry can be scary. Like there's a lot of people out there that are very
it's intimidating, right?
It's very intimidating, and a lot of people out there that are very opinionated. And the tattoo industry, it could be like that. It could be kind of almost just like unapproachable, and it could turn people off from doing things and putting themselves out there in a way that we need, because
right.
It could be tough, and even like for this podcast, there was a lot of me in a similar position. I was kind of like, man, should I don't know, is this a good idea? And do people actually want to hear this stuff? And if they do, are they going to just think like, man, who's this guy? Like, why is he doing this? And
right.
And it comes down to, you just got to do it. You just got to go for it. And like,
exactly, man, step off the ledge. I remember hearing something a long time ago that I've held on to. It, somebody said, how can you get the fruit if you don't go out on a limb, And I was like, oh my God.
Oh, very
genius.
good.
It's such a simple like saying, but yeah, I mean, it's so true, right? They're like, if you're very comfortable, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, anyways, I like that idea. I like that idea of, and do you get a lot of people sending in, their work to get your feedback on?
Oh my God, it's crazy. So it's more than I thought it would be. I kind of thought that I would have to reach out every now and again and get people to send in emails, but I know for certain it's over like 1,200 that are just waiting to be opened, and that I just started at the.
Oh my God, that's amazing,
dude! It's nuts. So I started at the oldest ones and then work my way to the newer ones. Of course, some of the images might be very blurry or something like that, so I kind of got to skip over them. But I'm honestly trying to get everybody's through there. And then there are those people that comment on every video, like, I still haven't seen mine yet, like I'm still waiting, and they kind of get bummed about it. But I'm trying not to skip anybody. I'm trying to nail them all down. So there's been some good ones. I think this new episode that's coming out this next Tuesday is probably one of the worst tattoos I've seen in my career. I'm not even kidding you. There's been a lot of good ones, but then man, there's a sprinkling of just tattoos. I'm like, holy cow.
So you don't hold back when you see a bad one, you let them know.
Well, yeah. So I don't want to be rude. Obviously, I'm not trying to be a dick. That one definitely took me by surprise. It left me speechless. But if there's, even in every bad tattooer, there's something that they can pick up and learn from you, right? Like the worse they are, the more they're going to pick up. I would like to think, if they're open to it. But yeah, so I'll try to give you constructive criticism throughout it. That one recently was a tough one, man, because like I said, if you're really far out there and you're doing a lot of bad things, man, there's a lot of shit to work on, and I don't think my channel is the space for me to talk and to like help you out for 30 minutes. I've got like a good 2 or 3 minutes I can kind of guide you. But yeah, sometimes you just see some stuff that you're like, oh boy.
yeah. And sometimes you don't really, there's nothing to say, but it's bad.
Yeah. So
sometimes
a lot of times it's nice when people in the emails, in the subjects or whatever, they'll be like, please be brutally honest, or some people are like, man, I think I killed these two, and then you're like, well, let's come back down to earth for a little bit, because I got some things I want to talk to you about, So it's just, the more information that people send in the emails, the better, because then I can kind of get a sense of what they're expecting. I like when people say be brutally honest, because it just kind of allows me to tell you exactly what I'm thinking. And like I said, I'm not trying to be a dick. And then sometimes, of course, my video guy also like throws ideas, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that part? So it's nice having another set of eyes with me as well as we're recording.
Well, that's cool. And I think that like everyone can benefit from that, even if it's that's what I like about doing guest spots and stuff, is you're around other artists especially if it's artists that you respect and you look up to, just being around them and having an opportunity to say, hey, what do you think of this? And, or just like ask them a couple questions, like that helps so much. And so, man, I like big ups to you for doing that. I think it's really, really special. And I wish more artists out there were like that are just willing to share what they know and give some advice and feedback, because
it's like right now, I know I'm not the only one, but right now I kind of feel like the masked magician, I'm just like, this is how you do this trick, and then people are like, hey, stop doing that,
Yeah. No, don't listen to him.
No, not at all.
But, so that being said, if there's anything that you think stands out to you, like one bit of advice that you would give to someone who's just learning how to tattoo, or if you could think back at when you were learning how to tattoo, I know it was a lot different than it is now, but if there's some advice you could give yourself when you were just learning or getting into this industry, what would that be, and what would you do differently?
It's another good question, because I feel like my answer kind of veers off in two different directions. I want to say, don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to try a lot of new things, but then also at the same time, you want to, like, let's say you're brand spanking new at tattooing. You want to focus more on like one size liner. Like let's say this is a person who's brand spanking new, fresh to tattooing. If this were my apprentice, which I don't have apprentices, but if I did, I would have them focus on one size needle for a long time. Like a 3-round liner. I'd make sure that they are as close to perfect as possible with that 3-round liner before they can move on to a 5 or a 7, and then let's get that down. And then as you get up to 9s and 14s, it just becomes easier, because as you and I both know, the fatter the needle, I feel like the easier it is to use. So, I'd want to focus. You have to have good focus on what you're doing, but don't be afraid to experiment. Maybe don't be afraid to experiment with the artwork and things like that, especially when it comes to friends and things, or your own thigh. Experiment to like crazy on yourself. You've got lots of meat on them thighs, so if you need to do a couple lines or do a couple shades or something like that, or try out a couple different inks on your thigh, so be it. That's what it's there for. And there's no better teacher than your own body to show you how things heal and how things work and live through years. But yeah, and also don't be afraid to ask questions. I feel like a lot of new tattooers, myself included, like I was so shy when I first started tattooing. I didn't talk to anybody until my old boss like forced that upon me. He forced me to go talk to people in the front room and say things that I might not be super comfortable with. But I appreciate that so much now because I have zero problems talking to anybody now. It doesn't matter who it is. But it's just not being afraid. I think the biggest thing in everything, in application, in talking to people, is just not being afraid, having some confidence. Work on that confidence because that's probably going to be your biggest tool to carry you through your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I like that because even for me, there's been times when it took me some time to build up the courage to even just reach out to another tattoo artist, and say, ask them a question or just say something about their work. And that I think goes a long way too. Kind of touching on what you're saying, is like, there's been so many artists that I've actually not said anything to, but I'm in love with their work. And I feel like if they, people like hearing that, they like that as well. And it works to your benefit in the long run. If you start to have some sort of relationship with other artists out there that are better than you or doing really good work, it's only going to make you want to be better, and
Absolutely.
kind of like you're going to push yourself to almost to try to match their standards and stuff like that. So I like that. Confidence is huge, isn't it? And it almost is like unnatural for artists to have that kind of confidence.
Right.
I feel like it kind of comes with being an artist. There's a lot of self-doubt and a lot of insecurities, and I think those are good as well, but you almost have to kind of silence those and put yourself out there. And
yeah, man, isn't that crazy that we all, every single one of us, deal with those same insecurities, but we're all thinking of looking at these Instagram profiles being like, damn, they're living it up, they're so confident, they're doing this, they're killing it right now, but they're at home just like biting their nails.
The same thing. Exactly. Yeah, we all go through it, and I think that's what's so cool about, I've gotten to talk to so many amazing people on this podcast, and hearing that everyone has those, everyone has the same insecurities, the same back problems, the same like exhaustion, like it's common across the board. And once I think we start to see that and understand that, it kind of, I think it takes the pressure off, but it also is like very encouraging. Like for me, it was very encouraging to know, okay, like I'm not the only one dealing with this, and that kind of allows me to go back into it with like a bit of, I don't know, like ease or something, or like peace, knowing that I'm not the only one that kind of is thinking these things or struggling with,
right.
Oh man, I don't know if I did my best on this tattoo or something like that, and yeah, because there's so many freaking good tattoo artists out there that in my mind, it's perfect. But like, of course, they're going to look at their work.
Absolutely, man. It makes you wonder if they're thinking the exact same thing. Because, I'm looking at every single one of my photos at the end of it, and I'm like, fuck, man. Should I post this? Because, I don't know, that nostril just seems a little weird. So I don't know if I want to share that with the world. But, you know what I found, too, on that note? The tattoos that I love the most get the littlest attention. The tattoos that I almost don't post end up getting the most likes or shares or whatever.
Isn't that weird? Yeah.
Dude,
I don't know
so
what the
weird.
story is with that, but because you're always, and I think as well as like when a tattoo has the potential to be really good, I think we're the most critical about those tattoos. For myself, if I'm like, oh, I got this really cool opportunity to do this portrait, and like, in my mind, it has the potential to be like my favorite tattoo. And if there's something that's the smallest bit wrong, or if I notice like one flaw, I just doubt it.
Yeah,
like
maybe
way
that's
too
what it
much,
is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, but of course, everyone else that looks at it, they're going to be like, oh shit, that's sick. And you know what else they do is they go scroll, stop for 2 seconds. Like,
Right.
oh, that's cool. Scroll.
So also,
And
that being said, on that note, I've tried to focus where I spend most of my time on tattoos on those spots. Like, let's say you're doing a portrait. As important as the stripes are on somebody's shirt, I don't want to end up spending all my time on the shirt. You know what I'm saying? Let's get that shirt out of the way and then focus on the most important parts that will also bring in the focus, not only for Instagram as you're sliding through, but also because, like, if you look at it in the mirror, again, looking at the shirt, you'll be like, damn, that shirt is amazing. But you don't want to take away from the main part of it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's interesting because I think sometimes that actually even involves like having to go off of the reference a little bit and kind of like improvise your own. Like, say, for example, if like the shirt was more contrasty than the face, you almost want to like vary from the reference and go, okay, I'm going to like maybe make this shirt a little less contrasted, and so that the features in the face are actually the thing that you see first,
right,
you know?
right.
And I'm learning to do that now, because sometimes you might follow the reference too much, and certain parts of it stand out as it's like the first thing you notice or the first thing you see, and it's not what you want people to look at first.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. That's a cool point, because I've run into that recently, actually, a few times, where you kind of have to like, you know, find what the main focus is supposed to be, and basically just exaggerate certain parts that might not be exactly to the reference or whatever, you know, photorealism, but it makes it that much better. Do you know what I mean?
For example, to carry off from that, like somebody told me a handful of years ago, about the glares in eyes. And I'm one to try and stick close to a reference as possible, but like typically what makes a more dynamic portrait is having one eye that stands out over the other one, right?
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
It's crazy. So somebody told me that shit, and then I've been doing it, and now it works so well. So instead of having like two big white glares in each of the eye, maybe just put it in one of the eyes. You know what I'm saying? Like put it in the forefront eye and let that one stand out, and you're just going to have this dynamic range, you know, and it just helps it, you know, be a little bit more powerful. Things like that, right?
I love that.
You know, that might not be exactly photo reference, but little tips or little tricks that, you know, people can feed your way.
I'm going to try that. That's good.
Hell yeah, man.
That's good info.
I'm telling you, it works. It's so good. I think some painter told me that. It was some painter. So, I mean, it's from an art background, but it works so well, you know?
Yeah, that's cool.
Because if you do both of them, it's just going to fall flat. You're going to pull the eyes to the same spot. So you need something to give it that contour.
That's interesting, too, because when you look at someone, you don't look at both eyes. You look at one or the other.
Right.
So maybe that has something to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I have one more question for you, and it's to do with tattoos that you have. Are you pretty much covered in tattoos? I know you don't have your face or your head or your neck, so if you were wearing a full suit, you wouldn't see any tattoos.
I got one little guy.
Oh, nice.
A little tiny guy on the side, but it's
it's behind the headphones.
It's like a temple. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I don't have a neck yet. My goal back in the day was to be completely covered, you know, from head to toe. But then, like, as I get older, I'm just like, you know, it's not super important. I don't have my back yet. I'm reserving that for my buddy Landon.
Cool.
Oh my God, that dude's a fucking monster.
Nice.
But, and then I don't have my belly. There are spots throughout my legs, you know, but my legs are, for the most part, probably more covered than anywhere else. My arms are, for the most part, covered, you know, a couple little gaps here and there. But, I'm just missing my back and my belly. And my head and neck. So
if you could name 3 tattoo artists that you would like to get tattooed by now, if you had the room, and if you could give him your forearms, do you know if you can name 3 tattoo artists now that you would just love to get tattooed by?
Yeah, I think I could. One that sticks out is this. I've been a fan of hers as of recently. Her name is Black Minimal from Hungary.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with her.
Yeah, definitely.
Holy shit, man. She just did this tattoo recently that was, okay, I love when I see a tattoo that absolutely blows my mind. And it's not just like, damn, did you see that? Damn, did you see that? But to me, this tattoo is like, what the fuck? Pardon my language, because she blew this thing out of the water.
Which one was that?
Oh my God, it was this negative image tattoo.
Oh, yeah. I know the one.
Man.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why I'm just so baffled by it. Like the skin tone that was used, that she left open, that when you put it in negative, that creates the black skin tone. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. And just like the gradient that she has from the skin to the hair, I'm just blown away by it, man. It's like, and I know that's like a trick, the negative thing, but she executed the thing so well.
So well. Yeah. No, I remember stopping on that one as well. And it took me, I definitely was staring at that for a while. And it's cool because, like you're saying, the negative space becoming the dark skin, it's like she even left room for like the pores on the nose and everything like that. Like that was a really, really cool piece. I remember staring at that one for a while. Yeah, she's phenomenal. Like she's always doing just really cool work. Yeah.
See that Peaky Blinders one? I've never seen Peaky Blinders, but that tattoo she did, I think had a couple bullets on it or something like that. Again, man, that's
so unreal.
Oh, the cleanliness is out of this world. So I think she's probably, definitely got to be one of them that I'd like to get tattooed by.
For sure.
I'm going to say Landon again, even though he's tattooed me once before.
Cool.
I can't wait to get tattooed by him again because every time I look at his work, every single time he posts something else, and he posts a lot. It's Tattoos by Landon, I think is his name, Landon Morgan.
Nice.
But, man, his line work is impeccable. He'll set up 4 or 5 lining machines, like some Dan Cubans and whatever. But,
oh, wow.
Dude, they're so crispy.
Very cool.
So I love his stuff. There's no shading involved. It's all line work. It's just so good.
Yeah, that's cool.
And probably for another one would be Paul. I think I'm going to butcher his name. Paul Indulski.
Yeah.
If you're familiar.
Pavel, I think. Pavel.
Is that how you say it?
I think it's Pavel. So I'm going to go with that.
Gotcha. Yeah,
I'm not sure. Yeah.
And I'm normally not a fan of when people suck the contrast or when they suck the saturation out of tattoos because I like to see the redness. I like to see what is actually tattooed and what is just red skin tone. And I do think a lot of so this isn't talking about his work because he actually posts his non-filtered work.
He
but
does,
when people
yeah.
post black and white photos without having that color in there as well, you're I don't know, man. I can't. To me, I can't judge it in my own brain being like, oh, that's fantastic because that could just be red skin. You could technically take a needle full of water, tattoo your skin with it with 0 ink, and it's going to look like a soft shade.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, I don't like when people do that. However, he posts all of his tattoos with, with that saturation still in there so you can see the redness, and they're still just as good as those black and white photos he posts.
Yeah, he has to. I have to say, he's got to be probably my favorite tattoo artist right now out there.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
I know what
I
know
do
what you're
not
talking.
get it. Like how he has those rectangle or different shapes that are just flawlessly shaded. And and I try to mimic that in my own tattoos. And I try to keep one direction with a needle or something, but I'll still look at it later and be like, "Oh man, I completely see my needle marks going different ways or whatever." Yeah. How does he do it?
I don't know. It's been a mystery to me for so long. And again, I'm the same. I've tried to implement that into my work, and I zoom in on his pieces. I don't get it, but it's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. And
this goes back to what I was saying about experimenting, because let's say that I'm using a certain cartridge or a certain ink or something like that might be a bit thicker or whatever reason. And let's say what the ink he's using is a lot thinner or something like that. I'm not going to be able to achieve what he gets with that ink that I was using at that time or those cartridges I was using at that time. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's beneficial to experiment and be like, oh shit, that made those shades a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you can get comfortable in your daily tools that you use. But I do think it's very helpful, very beneficial for you to, once in a while, grab a different brand of needle, grab a different brand of ink, try it out, see what happens.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's usually when you do make those small discoveries, is when you just give yourself a new tool or put yourself in a different environment. All of a sudden, you get a different perspective. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that's
you just
really
unlock something. It's like a video game. You're like, oh shit, achievement unlocked. Let's do this.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that's cool. Well said. Well, man, I really appreciate you doing this with me. It's been great to talk to you, and I know we were trying to do it even a couple months ago, and life has been kind of crazy with COVID and going back and forth to the States. And I know you were just in New York, and really quick, how was that? How was your time in New York?
I love it there. New York is one of my favorite cities, and everybody at the Inked Mag studio, it's Inked NYC. I swear to God, every time I walk in there, to me, it feels like family.
That's so cool.
I love being around those people there. It's always a good time. It's always a good time. I've never had a bad time. I can't wait to go home.
Yeah.
And then I love exploring afterwards. I like to take photos. I'm what do you call it? Amateur photographer. So
Nice.
I take photos when I can. So I'll bring my cameras and a couple lenses, and then after work, I just go walking around by myself, or if somebody wants to join. But usually just end up walking around by myself and snapping photos, taking them home, printing them, framing them.
Nice.
Yeah, I love New York, dude.
Yeah, I've actually never been, but I'm supposed to go. I was supposed to go before COVID hit, and obviously I had to cancel, and I haven't been able to go yet. But do
you have a shop you're going to go to?
Oh, I'm going to go do a guest spot with Zlata and Adam at the at Dot Creative Group. Yeah, so I'll do. I had that guest spot planned literally back in March 2019, 2020 or something like that. Yeah, they're so good. They're so great and so nice. And I was really looking forward to it. And I had everyone booked in and all the deposits paid. And then just last minute had to cancel. So, yeah.
I feel so bad. So Zlata and Adam came to my studio to guest spot a while ago. and I just changed stations recently. So like Goldie was using my station, and my station, she was kind of like crammed in this little tiny corner. I feel so bad, but hey man, if she wants to come again, I got a nice wide open spot now.
There you go. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that. Can't wait. And then obviously while I'm in New York, I'll probably bounce around to a few studios and say hi to some people that I've made, I don't know, small friendships with on Instagram and stuff like that, and just kind of meet some people. So that'll be really fun. And
you're gonna love it. It's so nice.
I can't wait. I mean, New York is one of the tattoo hubs in the world, isn't it? So and just as a city seems really cool. So
it's marvelous.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. But well, that's cool, man. I like I said, I really appreciate you coming on and doing this with me and giving me your morning. And it's been really great. I feel like I took a lot from that, just being inspired by what you're doing. And I really appreciate you, like I said, sharing your information and giving your wisdom and knowledge and where you're at in your career, and just trying to basically encourage people and be a positive influence in the industry. I think that's we need more people like that. And so I appreciate everything you're doing.
Well, I appreciate you, Jake, so much. You're too kind. Thank you so much for saying all those nice things.
Thanks for listening, everyone. If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to follow on social media and wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Spotify or Apple or Google. You can find me on Instagram at jankyjake_tattoos. And this page is at the_fine_line__. So many underscores. If there's a specific artist that you'd like me to have on the show, please feel free to send me a message, and I'll see what I can do to get them on. Once again, my name is Jake Berry, and this is The Fine Line.